President Muhammadu Buhari charged the National Council on Climate Change to formulate appropriate policies towards achieving green growth and sustainable development for Nigeria. The president also directed the Attorney General and the Minister of Justice, in conjunction with the Minister of Environment, to initiate appropriate amendments of noticeable implementation challenges inherent in the Act, highlighting the losses and damages caused by recent increasing flood in several parts of the country, as well as in Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other parts of the East and Southern Africa. The president described climate change as one of the biggest challenges facing humanity. Joining us in the studio is Professor Jibril Edicha, Head of Department of Geography and Environmental Management of the University of Abuja. Professor, it's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you for
and
inviting
I'm
me.
happy to say that despite the non-payment of salaries to professors, these professors seem to be looking way above.
Absolutely.
I hope your colleagues look as good as you look this morning.
Allah is kind to us.
Thank you very much.
Weather the storm.
Thank you. Before we come to Professor, we have a reporter, Jimmy, standing by from Benue State to give us an update of what the situation has been. Most states in Nigeria seem to have been ravaged by flood in recent days and all kinds of environmental challenges. Good morning, Jimmy.
Good morning. Thanks for having me this morning.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. Can you please bring us to speed with what the situation is with regards to the recent flood in Benue?
Thank you very much. The situation is still very dire here. As at Wednesday, we're with SEMA, where we got the briefing. And as at Wednesday, we had a total number of 18 local governments affected in Benue State, seriously affected in Benue State, with 116,084 persons involved, and then 12,856 households. As of Wednesday 28, we had 23 deaths. And of course, as we talk, you are aware that Benue State is a state that suffers a humanitarian crisis at the moment as a result of herdsmen and farmer clashes. And so the state seems to be overwhelmed with, an additional IDPs. And as I talk to you, the people, the victims are running helter-skelter, which is why the SEMA actually reached out to CEOs, NGOs, and of course, individuals to see how all can put heads together to help these people who are in their needs of our support at the moment.
Okay. Jimmy, could you tell us what kind of response have we seen from the State Emergency Management Agency in regards to this situation?
So far, what they've done is, a flag for palliatives by way of food items. We understand the Executive Secretary of SEMA, that is a State Emergency Management Agency, that the accommodation is a very big problem as we talk. Like I said, we have IDP camps in Benue, but these are occupied by people who have run away from their various ancestral homes because of the herdsmen clashes here. And so, as I talk, these people have no accommodation. In fact, some people are sleeping on water. That is just a situation. I met a man who is a civil servant 3 years ago. He said he has no place to go. That's his home, and of course, he has no any other place to go to. So he's there, and that's why SEMA, these groups I've mentioned earlier, NGOs, CEOs, and that, to see how we can all put our heads together. I remember some international organizations pledging that immediately they will swing into action. NEMA was also at that point, saying that they will actually put in one or two things, see how these people can be given succor.
So, Jimmy, a bit of clarity. At what point did NEMA start swinging into action? I say this because we have had warnings from NIMET much earlier that we are going to see flood in the region of what we saw in 2012. Did people make effort to move away from flood plains, or they remained there until the incident before we started seeing intervention? Did we see NEMA reaching out to people and asking them to move away from floodplain areas, or they are basically just showing up after people have been displaced?
Yeah, thank you very much for that. You see, sometimes I say the problem is actually the people themselves. As a journalist, I know we've been on ground when we got these signals coming in. It was pre-informed that this is going to happen anyway. And so we got asking people, what are you going to do? Because this same thing happened in 2012. Probably what now is a little bigger than what happened in 2012. But then people say, I don't know if it is fate or whatever you call it, but people insisted to stay back. And of course, you know that, even as a government, you can't just go pushing people out of their homes. So they didn't just make any attempts to move, to relocate. I mean, you imagine somebody said, okay, it's not coming to my house, and then the next day you go, you see that the water has taken that place that was safe yesterday. Is that serious? And so the people also have a share to blame in all of this. Number one, it was pre-informed and not made an attempt to move away from these areas. In fact, there's another dire aspect of it I already mentioned here before I forget. You're aware the university is on strike, like I heard you talking to the professor there.
Yes.
In Makurdi, the Benue State capital, part of that area where the water has taken over is where majority of our students stay. And imagine their books are in these houses, their mattresses and everything in this room. Some of them are not there. They could even be rich, like one. I tried to make some findings, and imagine what water has done to the entire area. So the people to us as a they didn't do well. Because I know that SEMA, for instance, because that even for government there's a little way, there's a little they can go, because we keep saying it. Personally, as a journalist, I keep saying this is what we are hearing, that we are going to have a repeat of 2012. Apart perennial water policy, remember that of course there was release of water from Lado Dam, which I'm sure will come.
Thank you very much, Jimé. We have to cut you there. Thank you for the updates that you have given to us. We will also be touching base with other states to get situation reports. We would now be returning. By the way, I don't have to keep you further, Jimé. Thank you very much for all that you have said this morning.
I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now let's turn to Professor. At the moment, we've seen heavy rains this year. We've seen heavy rains wash away farmlands, leave communities displaced, and hundreds of people off their homes. Would you say that this is as a result of climate change, or what is the cause of the heavy rains this year?
Thank you. No doubt, the level of rainfall we are having is explained significantly with climate change. And of course, what are we talking about? Climate change, which is essentially driven by our activities, both human and natural activities that trigger the release of greenhouse gases. And these greenhouse gases tend to warm the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases, in warming the atmosphere, it also raises the temperature of the surface of the earth. Waters in the polar environment, ice are being melted. And what it means is that the volume of water will also increase. And you also know that the environment is just one. They are interconnected all over the world.
Absolutely.
As the water is melting, it increases the ocean, it increases the sea, it increases the rivers, and everybody get to pay for it. But the fact remains that this is not the first time it's happening in Nigeria. Like the reporter had said, we had it in 2010. What had we put in place in that 2012 till now? Nothing. Nothing. It's the same thing we are saying here. Next year, in the next 5 years, 10 years, we are going to go through the whole process. You see, the problem we have in this part of the world and in developing countries that our approach to environmental issues is more like a reactive approach. It's reactionaries. We are not responsive to it.
Prof, you raised quite a number of issues in your response that I'm particularly interested in. I know that in recent time, the president has used every opportunity available to him at international fora, including the recent hunger, to call for global attention to Africa and especially Nigeria, especially as a result of this global change. You talked about the earth eating up and temperatures rising, by the way, with several implications for Nigeria, where there is a security dimension to that implication for us because of the drying up of the Lake Chad. The temperature rising then means that we have more severe cases of malaria around our environment to deal with. However, Africa as a whole accounts for just about 3% of this global warming. And today we are talking about green energy. We are nowhere around our development. How do we drive this kind of change in a continent that is already, that has not finished grappling with COVID-19, that is suffering from all kinds of debt and everything. Where should this response really happen? Is it the advanced economies bringing funds to help us fight this disaster, or we have to find a way to change from beneath?
You see, in the past, we had relied on the advanced economy to help us, but that is not working. We have international NGOs, advanced countries bringing aids to help us drive these environmental issues, but we are not getting it right. But we also thank God that now the climate change, the Council of Climate Change has been inaugurated. And to me, that is the major thing that this government has done. But the worry some of us are having is that we expected that this council should not be also be at the central level. We expect all the state capital, all the state government to have their own climate council, because environmental issues is on the concurrent list. The federal government cannot be everywhere to address the climate change. So when it is done at the state level will now drive it down to the local government level, because the people that are affected by the environment are at the local government level, at the grassroots and what have you. Let me give you an instance. We seem to be affected by this ecological crisis because majority of Nigerians and Africans depend on the natural ecosystem, on farming, livestock, anything you think about, even the energy. So that is why the impact of this climate change seems to be very significant in developing countries, and with particular emphasis in Africa. So what we can do now is to mobilize funds to address this problem. You see, I expect that the money that they're going to be injected in climate change should be in the way we are injecting money in security. Because that is the only way we can address what we are seeing here now. Look at how many people have died. Look at the havoc it has caused. Can you compare it with the level of insecurity, banditry that has happened for the past 7 months with what has happened for 3 days?
It's quite devastating. So,
and we are paying lip service to it. Let me tell you, the problem, we are paying lip service to the issue of climate change and environmental insecurity. And unless the government focus on it, we shouldn't leave it alone for the federal government. We expect the state government. For instance, we have just read the story from Benue State. It happened in Kogi State. It happened in Niger State. We had the same scenario in 2012. What have they done since that 2012 to date? You are talking about SEMA, State Environmental Management Agency. We expected that by now, each of the state government, the local government, should have a camp dedicated for any refugee emanating from this, from my experience in 2012. But we don't have. When they were warning if they are ready-made houses, estates that have been developed for this, when this thing is coming, people have been evacuated to that place there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and until the whole thing subsides, you move them back. But nobody's doing that.
Okay. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari has advised the new inaugurated Climate Council to implement policies that will help tackle some of this climate change issues. But a lot of people are scared at the same time that Nigeria is good at creating policies, but implementation becomes a problem. How do you see this panning out at the end of the day?
I agree with them entirely. You see, if you read that document, very robust. But the fear some of us are having is that it will go nowhere. Politicians will hijack it. Bureaucrats will hijack it. And then allow the common man to suffer. Let me give you an instance. If you look at the compositions of these members of Climate Change Council, most of them are bureaucrats. Most of them are politicians. But what do they do to the common man on the street to bring this into play? I want to give you a particular instance. Let's say, for instance, the government is talking about removing subsidy by next year. Do you know what that means? If the subsidy is removed, the price of energy will go up. When the price of energy goes up, People that are using gas now, are using kerosene now, they're not able to afford it. What do? They will go back to their charcoal. They will go back to their fuel woods. You are depleting the ecosystem, and that is going to impact on the climate change. So, but these are issues that are supposed to be looked into. So we have not looked into that. The policy document is very robust, but my prayer and my hope is that we believe that those people that are driving this policy document, they should be honest, they should be faithful, and have the fear of God, the fear of what Nigerians are going through, that they should bring a policy that is sustainable, that is not driven by interest.
Interesting, Prof. We would also like to take situation reports from our correspondent in Jigawa. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Can you please give us what the situation report is as at this morning in Jigawa?
Yeah, this situation is very, very devastating. You know, Jigawa State is situated in northwestern Nigeria with 27 local government. It has been experiencing flood for the past 6-7 years, but this is unusual ever. The flood was occurred in two forms: the rain and the running water from Tiga Dam in Kano State. The running water which caused the flood started from Ringim local government area of the state, which caused a lot of damage, and the flood moved toward the eastern parts of the state. Hadeja, Auyo, part of Malam Madori local government, and Gri, especially Gri, which is currently on danger as the water is moving toward a village called Lavia currently from Kadira area of Gri local government. It's on alarming rate. From the rain flood, Karnaya in Dusa local government has been affected, in which almost all the village displaced to primary and nearby filling station, which is along the Kano-Meduguri road. Then the Kiawa local governments also experienced the flood, in which road cut off. In Ringim local government, many villages displaced to nearby primary schools as their houses collapsed and ravaged. As a result of the recurring flood, over 134 people died, while properties worth over 1.5 trillion naira had been lost. This analysis comes from experts and the deputy governor of the state, Alhaji Umar Namadi, which is now the acting governor, as the governor is not in town, has traveled to abroad. The analysis shown that 22 roads and 11 bridges were completely damaged. The flood also affected over 272,189 people, out of which 76,887 people lost their houses and 134 died. Those that lost their lives was as a result of both capsize and building collapse, because all the buildings are moored within the communities. And the Jigawa State Police Command, the Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, NSCDC, and the Jigawa State Fire Service are working tirelessly to see that everything is calm and the affected local government. The roads and the bridges are no longer accessible now, linked to various local government. These are the bridge of Samia Gada, which linked Kapingana and Kwanar Huguma when you are coming from Brenninkudu. Then the bridge of Baranda, which links Kangire, Gambara, Hamayai, and Duse when you are from Brenninkudu. Also, a breakage at Balago, which links Kiawa and Jahun when you are coming from Kiawa local government. Another breakage in between Jahun to Gujungu, also the road in between Kapil Hausa to Auyo local government got faulty to the level of damage which cannot be accessed among other roads.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ali Rabiu Ali, for that
sir.
update from Jigawa. We will continue to stay in touch to continue to get updates on what is happening across the country. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Do have a nice day, please.
Thank you.
Prof, from the updates that we have gotten from these two states, it is clear that we are on a path of disaster. We are going to have a food crisis in our hands. We are just coming from a year where severe security challenges hampered agricultural productions, and we have seen a consistency in food inflation in over 1 year. We were hoping that this rainy season, by the way, we do seasonal farming in Nigeria, was going to help us shore up production since insecurity is now going down, to then improve food supply. But clearly, you are going to see more problem this year than we have seen, because in Kano to Jigawa and the rest, farms have all been flooded, and clearly we have lost what should be a bumper produce this year. How much of a crisis do you think we have in our hands?
You see, I believe very strongly that the crisis that we are having and are going to experience from next year is nothing compared to what we have had in the past. Because from the situation report from the field, the situation is dicey, very pathetic. These areas we are calling, they are rural areas, which means that the rural economy is severely affected. They are farmers, they are traders, their means of livelihood has been removed. And these people depend essentially on agriculture. Now that they cannot go out because the flooding has taken over their crops and what have you, you can expect that they are into problems economically. And if you migrate it to the national economy, then we're going to have problems. There's no doubt about that. But the problem is this. Now we have known this. What are we going to do? Do we wait till next time before we will now begin to address the problem? I think if the Climate Change Council that we have and the state government, it is now the time to start fixing it. This is the time to start fixing it. For instance, even we individuals are not helping the situation. For instance, the NIMET for the past 1 month had predicted this is what is going to happen. Did we respond to it? If we ask you to migrate from that place, will you agree? Yes, your property could be affected, but your life will not be affected. At least we could move from that place. Area has been described as a risk zones and what have you, to a less risk zone. Did we agree to move? We people moved. The people did not move. That would have reduced the risk. And I think that is the point that we need now to look at it. What is the problem that people are not migrating? I think that is the where the people need to do research. If they ask you to move from point A because this place there is ecologically risk area and go to point B, which is less risky, will you be able to go there? If you don't want to go there, what is your reason that you want to leave your ancestral home? Let us know so that will give us an idea on how to address the problem. Secondly, I also think that to alleviate this problem, the central bank or agricultural banks and what have you, I think it is high time these farmers, their crops need to be insured. That is the difference we have with the developed countries. Because these people would have borrowed money from the bank. All their life saving is gone. And do you allow them to be like that? I think the government, the central bank, agricultural insurance need to come in on how to save this situation. I think that is what is the immediate thing we can do.
Thank you so much for those insightful thoughts, but unfortunately we have to end it here. Thank you so much for coming on the program, and we hope to have you next time.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Let's take a quick break now. When we come back, the show continues. Stay with us.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is This is News Hour on Trust Television. Now, pardon me, this is Daybreak on Trust Television. It's now time for our second discussion on the program.